In 1969, Frances Beal wrote the essay, Double Jeopardy, to be Black and Female. But who was Frances Beal, and what was happening in the 60s? The 1960s was a time of major change in the United States. It was the civil rights era when people of different races and backgrounds were rising up and demanding equal rights. Black Americans were a big part of this movement. Groups like the NAACP, the Black Panther Party, and SNCC were all fighting to end racism and improve life for Black people. Although these groups often employed different strategies and tactics, they all worked towards a vision of the liberation of Black people from the oppression and violence they were suffering under racist America. SNCC was a group of young student activists who employed strategies rooted in community organizing. They believed strongly in developing interpersonal relationships with the people of a community in order to get them all involved under a common interest, in this case, the liberation of Black people. Frances Beal was part of SNCC, but she noticed something unfair. Even with this group that talked about freedom, women were often treated unequally. In regards to the treatment of women within SNCC, she said, "You're talking about liberation and freedom half the night on the racial side, and then all of a sudden, men are going to turn around and start talking about putting you in your place." Frustrated that people were only thinking about freedom for Black men and not for Black women, she co-founded the Black Women's Liberation Committee within SNCC. This later became the Third World Women's Alliance. She also became the editor for their newspaper, Triple Jeopardy. The women of the Third World Women's Alliance believed that fighting for freedom wasn't just about race or just about gender. It was about both and more. They stood up for people all over the world who were being hurt by racism, sexism, poverty, and unfair governments. Beal's essay talked about how Black women were being mistreated, not just because of their race, but also because of their gender, a kind of double jeopardy. Her critiques come from within the Black liberation movement as she explains the ways the movement excluded the experiences of Black women. Beal critiques capitalism as a system that created division and hierarchies. She writes, "The oppression of women acts as an escape for capitalism. Men may be cruelly exploited and subjected to all sorts of dehumanizing tactics on the part of the ruling class, but they have someone who is below them. At least they are not women." She points out the false sense of power that Black men exert over Black women to make themselves feel less small within the system. She suggests that the revolution may be more attainable if Black women were seen and treated as equal partners rather than scapegoats. She also spoke out against the U.S. government's testing of birth control and sterilization on poor Black women without their knowledge or consent. She connected this issue to similar things happening in places like Puerto Rico, showing that these struggles weren't just American problems, they were global. Through this example, Beal relates her own struggles as a Black woman for reproductive autonomy to the struggles of women of color in other parts of the world, rooting them in the effects of U.S. imperialism. She emphasizes that the destruction of this greater system will lead to liberation for all groups. Frances Beal and other Black women of the Third World Women's Alliance saw their liberation tied to every oppressed being in and out of the United States, no matter their race, gender, or background. They understood the intersection of identities and the need to make room for all those identities in order to progress together. They believed that liberation could not be achieved unless it meant liberation for all. But why does this matter? Engaging with media and documents from historical periods, like the Black Liberation Movement, gives us insight on the empowerment that was being felt by many Black Americans as they joined forces to fight for their rights. Frances Beal's words remind us that our struggles are tied to one another's. Many of the issues that people were fighting against over 50 years ago are still being fought against today. In the face of the current administration, we must remain united as we can achieve more together without leaving anyone behind.